Alright, so now we are all the way down to knitting being racist, and where does this come from? Well, in this article on Vox, it is explained that Karen Templer, someone who is, I guess, a prominent figure in the knitting community, was talking about a trip she was offered when she was a child to go to India, and she stated that she was fascinated by India, and being offered a trip to India would be like being offered a seat on a flight to Mars. Now, apparently this is racist, and I could see how someone who is absolutely desperate and determined to find racism absolutely everywhere, I could see how they could twist and distort what's being said into something racist. But the fact of the matter is, what does she mean when she says that going to India would be like being offered a seat on a flight to Mars? I think it's fairly obvious, given the context, that she means that once she gets there, she is going to be awe-inspired. She's going to be able to experience a place she's dreamed about and always wanted to go to. It's as simple as that. There is not but one degree of negativity in what she said. But furthermore, this article somewhat grants that people are being positive when they say things like this, but then it goes on to say that, quote, the tone felt like they thought India only existed to be all of those things for them, end quote. Okay, so now the criticism is that of self-centeredness, which is weird to me because, first of all, who really talks about or visits another country and thinks of it in terms of they are the way they are for me? I'm so glad they exist for me to experience. I've never met anyone with that type of demeanor. That would be a pretty incoherent way of thinking about international travel, and it seems to me that, again, this author is desperate to project her preconceived notion of some crazy whitewashed thought process onto white people. And secondly, if we're going to talk about self-centeredness, I did not see any coming from the comments about India from Karen Templer, but I did notice a lot of self-centeredness coming from the author of this Vox article. She found some pretty benign, mild, and gentle comments about India, then she mutated them into some weird, ultra-subjective form of racism, then decided in a pretty self-centered manner to write an article about it, and this article includes her experiences with her hearing barely even debatable racist comments. It's all about how she feels that the tone kind of sort of had a racist vibe to it, and this is what she has to deal with, and this brings up memories of some of her interactions with white people and how obtuse we are. Again, talk about self-centeredness. This Vox author has got it in spades. Then she goes on to quote some of the comments made to Karen Templer, in which someone said, quote, multiple times you compare the idea of going to India to the idea of going to another planet. How do you think a person from India would feel about that? Okay, well, first of all, there is some context that must be taken into consideration here. Again, if you're going to have a clear perspective on this, saying simply that somewhere else is like another planet, I guess that could go either way. It could be an insult, or it could be saying that it's a lot different from where you're used to, which is pretty neutral, I would think. But that isn't even what is being said here. What is being said is, again, India was awe-inspiring to her. It was a positive thing. It was something she admired, she had respect for, she had positive after positive emotions for. That is not something that can be cast aside as irrelevant. That has everything to do with whether or not this was an insult or a compliment, and it was so clearly a compliment. And this is also a pretty easy mental experiment you can do. Think about someone from India or Russia or Japan or wherever. How would I feel if they more or less said the same things Karen Templer said about India, but about the U.S.? That the U.S. is awe-inspiring for them. They've always wanted to come here. They've always wanted to see this or that. They've always been fascinated by our culture, and going to the U.S. would be like being offered a seat on a flight to Mars. I would take no offense whatsoever. In fact, I would be happy to show them around and give them a place to stay if I was able to. I'd be thrilled because I have what I think most other people have, and that is this ability to actually navigate through communication and take context into consideration and not assume the worst in everyone. I don't think I'm special or unique because I'm able to do that, but the author of this Vox article is certainly unique in her inability to sense out any sort of context whatsoever. And here's my final point. What is this author doing throughout this article? She's incessantly talking about white people, and as I said, she's projecting her preconceived notions of how white people think and what white people's motivations are, and extrapolating from that the most vile stuff so she can then pin it onto white people. It is so strange because on one hand, it's not okay to be white and even remotely suggest that there are different cultures and that you find that to be a positive thing. That is somehow turned into racism. But on the other hand, it's perfectly okay for this Vox author to just assume the worst within every white person she meets. But that's gotta be it for now. Please like and subscribe. That would be very cool of you. And see you later.